Morning everyone, hope you're well. Semester's coming to a close quickly, up to week 9. One of the more interesting topics I think that you'll find in the management literature is change management. Become very important, most recently given the environment that we work within. So that's what you're in for. Difference between creativity and innovation, that's a fairly basic bit. What stimulates innovation? So what should organisations do and how should they organise? Think last week's structure and design to set up a system so that they can innovate. Why do organisations need to change in the first place? And then finally, a fairly standard model about how changes occur in organisations. Okay, so first off, creativity versus innovation. So what a lot of people feel is that being creative is the same as being innovative. It's a bit like an inventor inventing a new product or a new idea, and then having to commercialize that invention in some way, and that is essentially the difference. One part of it, the creativity, the invention side of thing, is coming up with that idea, coming up with the link about this is a good thing and doing that. Innovation is actually, as it says there on the slide, taking that creative idea and turning it into a product, some sort of commercial use. And also have a look at the top point there. Organisations must create new products and services and adopt state-of-the-art technology to compete successfully. What that means is it's not necessarily innovation in the terms of the product or the services that are created inside the organisation. It might be also, and in many cases it is the case, that it's innovation in the processes that they use inside the organisation. So an example might be in retail when scanning came about. So prior to scanning, you'd use a cash register and you'd type in the amount of product times the price, and it would give you a total that you charge the customer. But then as scanning became more important or more commonplace, there was a whole range of different innovations that organisations in the supermarket or the retail sector could utilise as a result of that simple invention. Hope that's clear. Okay, moving on. So what stimulates innovation? The best way to look at it is the systems approach or the systems model. Innovate inputs, people, time, things like that. Through a transformation process, it gives us some outputs, and that helps us understand how organisations can be more innovative. Process requires having the right environment, which includes 3 variables, which are structural variables. Okay, so this one's going to be a bit drawn out. So structural variables. So remember, in the week just gone, we looked at organisational design and structure, and we discussed in some depth mechanistic and organic organisational structures. So we require in most environments that need to stimulate innovation an organic structure. This means that people have open communication, are not constrained by their hierarchy or the chain of command, have broad spans of control. You can go back to that slide and have a look, but those sort of things. Well resourced, it means that people have the time and the money to do what you're asking them to do. If people are under pressure, if people are stressed, it's less likely that they'll be innovative or creative. Communication needs to be open at all times, and the idea is there, a bit like that, a learning organisation, share knowledge, ensure that people from all aspects of the innovative process have the knowledge that they require to develop whatever that might be, the product, the process, the service that they're looking at. I said well resourced, including time, and there you have it again, my apologies. Minimal time pressures. So people need to be creative. If you can think of yourself, if you're sitting at home and you're doing your assignment, if you're under pressure, you'll likely just whack it out as fast as you can to get the job done. This tends to be the opposite of what's required for innovation. If you've ever sort of done this yourself, developed a product or come up with a new idea, you know that you're most innovative when you can, if I can just use the phrase, have a play around with something when there's no one sort of on your back to do other chores or to do other tasks. Lastly, their creativity needs support, and we'll sort of come into more detail about this as we go through these 3 points. But it needs to be supported by senior managers in recognition that it might not always work as quickly as you wanted it to, or as well as you wanted it to. As a senior manager, it might not deliver exactly what's required, but there needs to be an understanding that looking after the people who are the creatives in the organisation is an important aspect of running that business. Okay, so of the 3 variables, we've just looked at the structural variables. What happens in terms of the structure? How do we design a structure that does this? The next one is people. So training and development. People need to have training and development. They need to be able to develop their own knowledge in the area that you're asking them to be innovative in. They need to have training, for example, possibly in conflict resolution or even risk management, and we'll see that in the next section. Job security. If people are pressured to keep their job, they are less likely to take risks. Think about yourself. If you're working, you'll probably have situations where you think, oh, there's got to be a better way to do something than what the organisation's doing at present. And you might come up with the idea only to be told essentially that if you did that, you'd lose your job. That's the opposite of what we really require in innovative organisations or to promote innovation. Second last one there, idea champions. These are the people that dream up those ideas, that come up with the creative solutions to the problems that no one else has been able to essentially figure out. We need those people. We need those people that are willing to put their hand up and say, hey, I've got an idea. And depending on the organisation, there may not be very many of them because of these other constraints, such as the structural variables. They may not have enough training and development to become those idea champions. Lastly, they need to be motivated. A lot of the effort that goes into innovation is not really recognised, is not really rewarded, because you're expected to have some sort of output in most jobs. A lot of this innovation may take time where there is no output, or these ideas that have taken years of the individual, yourselves, just dwelling on this little problem, and then all of a sudden an aha moment comes about, and you see, I get it, do this, and you've got that solved. Without motivation over a long period, then that's not likely to occur. Okay, last one, cultural variables. So we've looked at the structure, and these are very much interrelated in terms of what an organic structure should be, but in terms of this also, there needs to be some cultural variables within the organisation. So low levels of external control, meaning regulation by the government, for example, or even senior management control. Tolerance of ambiguity. So there must be a culture where, for example, it isn't highly formalised. It is allowing people to essentially test their ideas. There might not be a specific statement of what's required for this innovation project. There's no specific goal, for want of a better word, just maybe an improvement approach in terms of the process. So this ambiguity has got to be recognised and allowed for. We've sort of talked about control as part of the PLOC 4 functions, but this is trying to allow a lower element of control to let people have a play, use their intuition and their knowledge to develop a better idea. Leading straight into that, we've got risk. We've got to tolerate risk. Some ideas are not going to work. Some ideas are going to fail and cost us money. We have to recognise as managers that this is likely to be the case at times when we're looking at highly innovative processes or people. Lastly, their tolerance of impracticality. I'm sure we've all been at meetings where someone has had an idea, and we sort of shoot them down. We sort of say, "Oh, that's not going to work. It's impractical." Well, if we're looking for innovation, we have to be far more tolerant of that impracticality. While it might not sound like a good idea at the moment, how can we make it happen? Maybe with a few tweaks and things like that to get this idea to market, it actually becomes a winner, and we just don't see it up front. The tolerance of conflict, and not something that we do well as people. Most people tend to move away from conflict, but this isn't interpersonal punchy type conflict. This is conflict about ideas. This might be your idea isn't as good as mine, but instead, if we think about it in terms of win-lose circumstances, there's not going to be any benefit. If we think about it in terms of, well, a bit of your idea, a bit of my idea together allows us to go forward, well, that's the winner. That's what we're looking for. Focus on ends, not means. So that means focus on the result, not necessarily how you get there. How long does it take, and how much money have we spent? Yes, they need to be considerations, but the ends can be so much more beneficial in the long term than worrying about the means. Now, this is a balancing act. You can't just ignore cost. You can't just ignore the amount of time that it takes to develop this new product if your company is relying on it in particular. But that's the aim of the game there, to allow a bit more of a focus on the outcomes rather than on the processes to get there. Okay, last one there is an open systems focus. What we're saying here is that people should be able to join in, that there should not be a closed process alienating people from giving their ideas and their support or their resources to helping the innovations come through. Lastly there, positive feedback. I'm sure you've all had, pardon me, feedback that has been negative in the sense that you haven't done your job well, do it like this. Here, the idea is to try and give positive feedback in the sense that you're really close, and with this, it'd probably improve and it'd be great. That'll do, yep. Okay, moving on, nearly there. Why do organisations change? Two main reasons. Think about the week 3 lecture in terms of the environment the organisation faces itself. There's two, internal and external. So the internal stuff, largely related to organisations' strategy. So often to meet the external environment, we'll change the organisation's strategy or so forth. So if we're redefining the organisation's strategy, we need to consider how we manage change to do that. Composition of an organisation's workforce, particularly these days. A good example would be in an old business where a lot of new younger employees are coming through. The expectation of technology is probably going to be higher. The expectation of work-life balance and maybe better rewards will mean that the organisation, the traditional old organisation, will need to implement some sort of change. This is distinct from innovation, by the way. We're not talking about innovation here. It might be part of it, but here we're talking about just managing change to the business. And lastly, employee attitudes. As a result maybe of time pressure or the organisation's culture or something, the employee attitudes may be starting to show dissatisfaction through things like absenteeism, more complaints in the employees' complaints box or something to that effect. So we may see something coming out from what the employees are saying. We may need to change it. And again, if I could use work-life balance, as people become, while there is a greater increase in society for single parents, there is obviously a bigger need for people to be able to have time off to take care of their children, mother or father, it doesn't matter. So a business that ignores this is likely to see their employees leave. So there's a need to change our policies, I suppose, our rules on work-life balance. So when does a person need time off? Do they have to ring the boss the day before and say that they need time off, or is it okay for them to say, sorry, can't come in today, my kid's sick. And that sort of attitude of the employer then will impact on the employee and hopefully generate better goodwill, etc. Okay, so that's the internal side of things. The external side of things, the marketplace. Something's changing in the marketplace, in your industry. Customers are expecting an online service rather than just a bricks and mortar shop front service. So we have to start to do something in that space. A common one is government laws and regulations. Most of you can probably still remember when in hotels or in pubs you were allowed to smoke cigarettes. Obviously, when the laws came out and the government said, sorry, it's against workplace health and safety policy for you to allow your staff to breathe in secondhand smoke, you've got to set up a smoking area outside. They had to change. How are we going to do this? How are we going to police this? How are we going to pay for this? All of that had to be considered inside the organisation. So commonly, government laws and regulations are a very large basis for change, and in good or bad ways. What I should say is, it might be something that's coming in, a government law that's going in, that says the business must do something new, or a law that's coming out. They're saying, well, we're not going to keep this law anymore, it's being removed, so that the organisation may change to take that as an opportunity for less regulation. Another common one is technology. So technology, ever present, always changing. So how do we use it? And a good one is me doing this video for you in my office rather than going to a lecture for 2 hours and going through the slides. The external, in fact, you could argue the marketplace has driven this need for the technology to be used, you being the marketplace. Okay, labour markets. A bit like the internal composition of an organisation's workforce, but what's happening in the labour market? Have I got a lot of younger people coming into the workforce that I need to utilise in terms of casual labour, or should I be giving them full-time jobs in an effort to enhance the talent that I get into my business? Economic changes, depressions, recessions, times of success or economic success within nations. It might be that we've had a really good couple of years, so we can afford to spend some more money on training. That training means I'll probably I'll put it in a training department inside my HR section. And as a result, that'll impact heavily on how we train inside the organisations because of the availability of more cash. Okay, so that's why organisations change. Last one here, the 3-step change process. This is by far the most common way to understand change inside organisations. It is not without its criticisms. So one of those criticisms, well, I'll tell you what those criticisms are. The whole idea is we have a situation, the organisation is at point A. This is the way we do things, we've been doing it for years, and we see that there's a need to change, moving to point B, the way we need to be doing things in the future. Lewin suggests that the best way to do this is unfreeze what we know now, change, and then refreeze what we do in the future. Unfreezing can be equated to unlearning. I know that sounds weird, but what we're going to do is we're going to get our staff to essentially forget what was required of them to do their job in the first place. Now, this isn't without concern or stress to staff, and we'll go through that in the workshops. But we're going to try and say to them, look, we know what you were doing before was really useful, but we need to get you to stop doing it that way. We want you to do it this new way. Whatever that might be customer service, that might be processing invoices, that might be using the computer system to do your orders. Anything that you want to change can go through this process. In the changing spot, let me go back. In the unfreezing point, we're also trying to give people a reason to change, why this is necessary. We'll make more money. You'll have a better job. We'll make your work easier if you do it like this. All these sort of things can help communicate to people what they call, and I'll be specific, the need for change. Okay, in the changing phase, the second phase, we're going to train people with the new ways of doing things. We're going to try and identify those people inside the organisation that have embraced the change, are quite happy with it, if I can say it like that, and we're going to get them to lead others who may be not so confident with this change. Imagine like McDonald's, we had a specific statement for purchasing or upselling our products. Would you like fries with that is a common one that you'll probably remember. And we want to change it from being so basic to letting people have their own input into what they should say. Rather than saying, would you like fries with that for everything, they can say whatever they feel like. Oh, look, you've only got 2 Cokes there. Would you like a 3rd Coke for your 3rd purchase? Something like that. We're trying to get them to have a bit more leeway. However, some people might be so keen or so trained, indoctrinated is probably not the right word, but so used to saying, would you like fries with that? It's really difficult for them to change. So we try and get other leaders who have been able to change to motivate those people to make that decision to move forward. Finally, refreezing. This is essentially embedding the change into our systems. We've trained people, we've got the people that want to change to move along, and look, to be honest, we may have had to get rid of people that did not want to change, which is a shame, but it still happens. This is the real world. In the last stage, refreezing, we're taking all of those changes, or the change that we're doing, and making it the norm inside the business. This might come through staff awards, where you're rewarding people through an awards program that says, hey, look, person B was really great in this space. Here, look, here's a $100 voucher for Bunnings or whatever else it might be. Congratulations, you've done a great job. This is beginning to make people inside the organisation see that this is the focus of the business, to make this new way of things, way to do things, the norm. We'd probably start to initiate performance appraisals with this as a key aspect of your performance measurements. If you follow the change, tick in the box, well done. If you don't follow the change, cross in the box, go back for retraining and learn how to do it the way we ask you to do it. It can be pretty difficult if the organisation hasn't been, totally convinced of the change. The senior management might say this is important, but it hasn't quite filtered down to the junior management yet, so they haven't promoted that to their staff. So we might get some mismatch in what's being expected and what's actually happening. And this is our chance as managers to make sure that that refreezing continues. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pretty sure that's it. So next week, understanding groups and managing work teams. Pretty important stuff for your time both at university and outside in the real world. And once again, thanks. Have a great week. Bye-bye.